Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Tuesday night, so we're going to talk about Your Honor, but obviously today across New Brunswick, we've been getting hit by some snow, rain, hail. It depends across the province, but Shamus in St. John, he's tuckered in. He's okay. He's here tonight. What's the weather like in St. John tonight, Shay?
It's now more just rain, I guess. But like most of the day, it snowed, and now we're just getting this kind of shitty rain that comes in late. But I mean, it's okay. You can work from home and you don't have to go outside. It's not that bad. What about you? How'd you stay humble throughout the storm?
Yeah, no, just went out and shoveled about every hour, so I didn't have too much to shovel at one time. So that was good.
Is that your way of getting your workout in since you can't go
It's
to the
yeah,
gym?
it's get outside, throw some headphones in, listen to a little Dan Patrick show, and just kind of get in my own little world there. So that
Now,
was it's kind of my routine when we get a storm.
I didn't know this, but like plenty of people every year get like massive heart attacks during like shoveling snow. Did you know that?
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't realize it was like a main killer of these heart attacks because they go all out on these couple, you know, like take your time, people. Like just it's not a race. The snow will go away eventually. But when I heard that, I was like, who in their right mind is like breaking their back and breaking their hearts over snow?
probably Tom or Harry, just grinders, right? They gotta get that cleaned off because Karen's inside and she's bitching. So it's gotta go.
Got to get done. They waited to the last possible moment, and then now they're in a rut, and they got to get going.
To get their Friday night beer and wings, that snow's gotta be gone. Like it can't even be in the yard. So they gotta launch that stuff.
Uh, but
But
anyways, now looking forward to it.
yeah, so tonight we're going to talk about episodes 7 and 8 of Your Honor. Yeah, we'll talk about the show as a general whole. I voiced my displeasure last week about episode 6 and kind of the plot line. And we'll talk about what happens. But yeah, it's a show that I think for me, Shay, it's on the downward slope ever since the halfway point. I've been kind of disappointed in the arc and the story writing for me anyway.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing it more these last two episodes than I was. I didn't mind the episodes 5 and 6, but definitely starting to see some plot holes arrive later in the series, especially these last two episodes.
Yeah, so at the end of episode 6, we saw Jimmy Baxter. He spared the judge's life because he said, your son Carlo is going to jail for murder of Kofi Jones. You understand, I can help him out. So we start the episode. Jimmy Baxter's in his car. He's driving frantically. He's crossing over lanes. He's almost getting in a car accident. He's trying to call Carlo and saying, do not go to the hotel. Do not go to the hotel. And Carlo had just did a drug deal with the Desire Gang. He had $150,000 cash in a bag. He's feeling good about himself, and he's the big man. And as soon as he gets to the hotel, he talks to his mother. Within seconds, he's arrested.
Yeah, it's pathetic. Like his dad's calling him. For anyone, I don't know about you, but if I get a call back to back, okay, so if I don't answer the first one, whatever, I'm like, okay. It's that old saying, oh, if it's important, they'll call back.
Right.
Well, his dad's name pops up on his phone multiple times, and he's just like, no, ignore. And obviously pays the piper because if he would have answered the call, for one, he would have left the hotel, but two, he would have been able to stash the money.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's caught red-handed with 150 bills right on him. So I mean, I don't know what you do about that.
Yeah, so he's in the car with his buddy, and this was another weird plot line for me, Shay, because the buddy escapes. He leaves the
Mhm.
hotel without getting found. He kind of goes back to this halfway house, like drug, like just a mess
Mhm.
of a place. And then we don't see him again for the rest of the episode or episode 8. Like, and he's got a bag with him, so clearly he's got either drugs or money in it, and we don't hear from him. I found it weird how they focused on him leaving and then they never did anything with it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. They brought him up once, like, oh, where's so and so? I forget his name, but and then it was like dropped like that. It was like they didn't even care. I think there's a part that where they do go visit the Desire Gang, and they're like, "Yo, Big Mo says, I want my drugs," and Jimmy's like, "I don't know where this guy is," and that's that. You better drop this. And we'll get into that scene later, but yeah, it's other than that, it's really not brought up again throughout both episodes, and yeah, we see these plot holes throughout the rest of the series. I feel you brought it up with Trevor, the blackmailer in episode 6, and I think we're starting to see them kind of throughout the series, but we can go more into depth in that later.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so Carlo gets picked up by Nancy Costello, and she kind of interrogates him. And it's another weird scene because it's not an interrogation, but she's talking to him really weird, and she does reveal to him that it's a death penalty case. Like he could be killed here for murdering Kofi, and she kind of gave him an out to confess, and that he wouldn't be maybe killed. He wouldn't be tried for, he wouldn't be on the death penalty, but he didn't bite, and his lawyer showed up before he could do anything. But clearly, his demeanor to Misha, he did not look worried.
No, yeah, and I think it's your it's your typical, Richie rich kid. Oh, my daddy and mommy are gonna get me out of this situation. Like, no, no worries whatsoever. And towards the end, I think he was starting to get a little worried because he was kind of like he looked like he was about to say something to Nancy before someone
Mhm.
interrupted him. But yeah, the whole conversation, he didn't give a shit.
Yeah, and yeah, he's still kind of the same person. He's been really aloof with his family. He's been kind of arrogant and disrespectful to his father since getting out, not telling him what he's doing behind his back.
Yeah.
And during this whole scene, at the end of episode 6, Trevor, the blackmailer, was killed because he was a loose end and he knew everything. The judge basically got him killed. So they're back at the wharf, and we see that the judge is dragging his body in this really bad taped up carpet, basically, and they're dragging him towards the boat that he had financed with Frankie, the redhead, who's his kind of Jimmy's right hand man. And they're dragging him. He falls out of the. At one point, he falls out of the wrapping, and they almost get spotted by a guy, and Frankie pulls a gun out. But and of course, through this whole process, they're pulling this guy, and Frankie's not helping the judge at all. He's got blood all over him. He's wearing a suit, white. It's all full of blood, and it's quite a scene. It's right in the open too, which is really crazy to me.
Yeah, well, it's in this huge shipyard. You'd think that somebody, a worker, or like you said, like Buddy, who was just sitting there, somebody is going to, see them. But that's another plot hole. That's like just stuff like that doesn't really make sense. Like if it was like, you know, 12 o'clock at night where it was
Mhm.
dark and they were dragging through, yeah, that makes sense. Like obviously, if I was at distance, I couldn't see them, but broad daylight, like, oh, come on.
Yeah, this is clearly midday, or like 3 o'clock. I kind of thought 3 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're dragging a guy, and somebody's not gonna be like, that looks a bit weird. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
turn around and get back to work.
yeah, there's you see it. It's not my business. Just keep
And the
walking.
gunshot, like the gunshot from the end of the end of episode 6, someone's going to report that, or someone's going to hear that and say something. They're not just going to let it go. It was in a building, so I think it's going to echo throughout the building and then probably throughout the doors. But I
Yeah,
mean, maybe I don't know, but they're just plot holes kind of
yeah.
throughout this.
So yeah, they drag this guy. The judge and Frankie launch him into the boat. Just he hammers his head off the side. They're doing their damnedest to hurt him more, and they drive out to the middle of the river, and they basically attach him to an anchor, and they throw him in the water, and then they release the anchor, and he's sent to the bottom of the lake. But uh, this was another kind of weird. I don't know if this is the smartest thing to do, because you can go find people in the water, and that happens all the time. I mean, the anchor is not necessarily going to stay there.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of, well, if you don't wrap him up, what are the, his body will finally decay, and then, say his leg just completely comes off his body. Well, I mean, the body's going to float up to the surface, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they do that. It's kind of him and Frankie are the judge at one point has a box cutter in his hand. It kind of looks
Mm,
like he might make an attack at him, but
yeah,
he knows he's in a no-win situation. He's got to do what the Baxters want here because they got him by the short and curlies.
yeah, exactly.
Um, he's got to scrape the floor of the boat, and he's financed the boat, so he's still in hot water here if something happens. Like,
Ex- Exactly. It's funny too because Frankie makes a great point, and I thought this was really interesting. He was like, he's like, this is the other side of that courtroom, basically, that you've been living your whole life upon. And I
mhm.
thought it was so true. Like, how many how many times would if he sat face to face with all these killers, but he had no real recollection of what they do, or what they go through essentially. And he finally gets to see that other side by having to dispose of this body, the blackmailer's body, Trevor.
Right. And so yeah, they do that. It's kind of a long scene too. I
It
thought
is, yeah.
they dragged it out a lot. I found it was a large chunk of the episode. But at this time, these are some of my favorite scenes. Jimmy and Fia together. I find them both very intriguing characters. Fia's obviously Jimmy's daughter. She's dating Adam, and they're at the track and they kind of talk about Carlo. Fia's Fia's got a love-hate relationship. She tells Adam at one point, the wrong brother died. And that's, a powerful quote. And Jimmy is very for the way he's been treated by Carlo, he's very good to his son. And he kind of defends him in this sense. And he they kind of share this emotional moment where they're both kind of like, you know, Carlo's a bad person, but he's our family. Like, we got to defend our family here.
Hmm. Yeah, I 100%. Yeah, that's accurate. And I mean, it's eye opening, right? Like, he loses one of his kids, he probably thinks, okay, I got to do whatever I can to protect the other two. Fia being more safe than Carlo, obviously.
Hmm.
But I don't know, but do you find that Carlo and Gina, the mother, have a strong connection, and then it kind of goes the opposite way with Fia and Jimmy?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's weird. I think that happens a lot more often than in real life. Like, just father daughter just seem to click. And mother son in the same sense. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think you're apt with that. And Jimmy goes back to the wharf, and this is this was a good. I like this scene. He talks to the judge about the day Rocco died. You know, the judge shows some fervor here. He kind of backs him up, and he says, I did everything I could for your son. And it wasn't him that was there, but he says, Jimmy said, well, no, you didn't. You were a piece of shit man. Like, you let him die. Like, he was breathing and you didn't call 911. You didn't help my son. And, the judge responds with, well, do your kids know that you blew up Kofi Jones's house and killed all those people inside? Do they know what kind of a man you are? And it was a ballsy thing to say to a guy that's got your fate literally in his hands.
Yeah, no, it was. I think it was a little too ballsy for my liking, but yeah, no, you're right. And there's a powerful quote by Jimmy. He basically says, he's like, do you know what your feelings are like after after the judge accuses him of this? He says, do you know what your feelings are like when you lose a child?
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy says, it's pain, failure, and then, like, also sort of freedom. So
Mm-hmm.
he, in his eyes, he has kind of a freedom to do whatever he wants because he lost Rocco.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of like a cool line that he said by him, but clearly a psychopath line in the same sense because I mean he's just off the rails.
Yeah, and then he closes with saying, "I will cut your fucking heart out." Like
Yeah,
if you screw up my son's case, I'm not just gonna kill you. I'm gonna cut your fucking heart out. Like it's
no
gonna,
pressure.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. Um, and it was at this point that the judge finally gets home. He's still covered in blood, so he's trying to clean himself up. Adam walks in. They go through this awkward talk about his mother and how they met, and he's lying again. And he's but he's still got a piece of brain on him, and of course of Trevor's brain. And Adam says, "Well, what's this?" And he goes, "Oh, I get it from the butcher for Django. It's just pig brain or whatever." And he feeds Trevor's brain to the dog, which is really gross.
Yeah, another make up a quick story on the fly by the judge. And yeah, it's pretty gross. I mean, even to let your, like, I would have probably stopped him, to be honest,
Yeah.
but to let Django eat it, maybe he didn't have the chance. Maybe, I don't know, Adam threw it in his mouth before he could even think about it. But oh, that's gross.
Yeah, very, very. So that brings us to the courtroom, and this is kind of the preliminary hearing. So the judge is going to go over this part of it, but he's not the judge in the actual case. He's just here for the preliminary hearing for bail, things of that nature. And we get introduced to Miss McGee, who's the lawyer of the Crown, of Kofi Jones, defending Kofi Jones. And I found it interesting, Shay, that it wasn't Lee. She's been kind of the head of it all show. We haven't seen this woman before, but Lee's been kind of defending Kofi, and she's not the one doing it in the plot line. I found that was interesting.
Yeah, it's another weird thing they threw in there. And I do like this lawyer's character. She's nice. She's kind of a little bite to her.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was weird. Like, you'd think if you were gonna tie things in, you would definitely make Lee the lawyer for this case. It only kind of made sense. She's worked the case. She knows all the details to it.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know if there's some special connection. I don't. Maybe we missed the part where they said that this lawyer has it out for the Baxters. And but yeah, to me, it doesn't make much sense.
Right. But yeah, I agree with you. I like her character. If anybody's seen the movie Liar Liar, she's actually married to Jim Carrey in the movie, or his ex-wife in the movie.
Mhm.
She's been in a lot of different works too, but that's kind of the one that came to mind when I saw her the first time. And she's different. She's definitely a different lawyer. At one point, the judge kind of rebutting her argument, she tells the judge to go fuck himself. And after he said, be specific why, Carlo should not get, get bail, basically. And then she goes on to say that if there's flight risk, Carlo is basically a fucking airplane. Like he's in the air already. Like he's the definition of a flight risk. Like he should not even get close to getting bail. And there's really not much the judge can say in defense of that because she's dead on.
Yeah, yeah. Everything she says is pretty much true throughout this episode and the next.
Yeah.
She's a very good lawyer. You can already tell that. Everyone just kind of looks around like, what the hell? And then she's like, yeah, is what Carlo said to the cop when they arrested him. But yeah, no, it's uh, and for him, he's got to act tough because the Crown is kind of watching him, and they know that he's let a couple of these cases go. We've seen it in previous episodes. The first episode with Kofi's mother, letting
Mhm.
that one kind of slide as well, and then later with the man stealing the meat. So I think they're kind of like, okay, like you got to kind of crack down on some of these and uh, start making sure that these people go away, or that this is what the Crown wants to see. And that's kind of why he got this preliminary meet, was to firm up the Baxters. I thought it was interesting that Jamie kind of put his 2 cents in there, and
Mhm.
then there was no really repercussion. Like, he was basically told to shut it, and that was it. But nothing really happened from it.
The judge basically has to say like, yeah, he's not going to get bail. Like, I can't come up with a defense why he would get bail. And then Jimmy yells out, "Go fuck yourself," to the judge. And, at first I thought it was actually because he was really pissed off, but they meet later in the hallway. And I think Jimmy did it more as a strategic thinking. He said, okay, now they think we're at odds. We'll never get along, right? And there's no suspicion from the lawyers or the court in general. Nobody's going to think, well, these two could be in cahoots together. And
Right.
Jimmy Jimmy also wanted to send a message like, I'm sitting here, I'm watching, get Carlo off here because this is not happening.
Yeah, that's a fair point about making sure that they don't look like allies. That's smart.
Yeah. So yeah, we say you mentioned earlier that Jimmy, he goes to meet with Big Mo, and this is over the drug deal, and this is over the money that he got, and Jimmy basically says, "I don't got your money," and Big Mo says, "Well, no, that doesn't work for me. Like I want my money."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, too bad. I'm not paying you back. That's not my problem. That was my son's deal. Deal with it." And they leave. And Big Mo is basically, she's like, well, I guess we'll have to deal with this our own way then.
Yeah, it leaves a lot to question what's going to happen. We don't see anything really develop from this in the episode 8, so
No.
you kind of think that these last 2 episodes after that are going to have a lot of impact and maybe some warfare. We'll see. It's weird. It's like this whole series feels like it was supposed to be kind of this build up to your family, but it never really happened. So I'm interested to see if the last 2 episodes kind of brings that out.
Yeah. And then there's another scene in this episode that was weird for me too. Lee, we find out Lee kind of works at this firm that's not about being a public defender. She's more of a corporate lawyer. If you watch Better Call Saul, she's kind of Jimmy's right hand woman there, his girlfriend in the show. She's kind of like that. She doesn't really like what she does. She wants to be a public defender. She's kind of like Kim Wexler, sorry, in Better Call Saul, and she actually gets fired because she's too focused on the Kobe Jones case, which she's making no money to do, and the firm hasn't hired her to do it, and she's not worrying about her tax job and corporate law basically, and she's let go from her firm.
Yeah, I mean that's a toughie, obviously. Like, but at the same time, it's a great scene. She's pretty passionate about this, and you could tell that this is probably what she wants to do, like you said. And their boss just looks at her and says, "Okay, now if you convince me half as much as you just convinced me that you wanted to be Kofi Loans destroyer as much as you wanted to be our client's lawyer, then I'll let you come back." And she obviously can't because she just doesn't care.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe this her doing that's more of just the writers trying to be a little profound with people don't settle for the job that you don't like you only got one life, so maybe if you hate your job, get out of it. There's always another opportunity. So
Mhm.
but yeah, her not being the lawyer in this case is still, it's weird to me that they build her up the whole time and then she doesn't get to do it. Maybe something happens to the opposing lawyer and she steps in the last couple episodes, but yeah, I found it strange.
Yeah.
So this, Carlo did not get bail. He's staying in jail. But of course, the judge is not going to be doing the case. It's going to be Judge LeBlanc. It's his good friend. We've seen her in the show. She's a black woman. She's a strong judge, a good judge, but she does have a history of hating the Baxter family. That's quite clear. And really, on paper, this is really an open and shut case. I mean, Carlo clearly killed Kofi Jones, but if they're going to have any hope in hell of getting him off, it's going to have to be Michael, the judge, to get him off. So it's his birthday. He invites her to go for a drink, and they just kind of sit there and they talk about different cases, and they're going over, their careers and whatnot, and they have, 2-3 drinks together. Not enough to not pass a breathalyzer, but they have a couple drinks. He gets picked up by Lee because he's had a few more than her. But while she's driving, and this is just what a scene. While she's driving, she gets pulled over by the police. And this probably had a couple meanings, this scene. Of course, she's a black woman. She gets pulled over by two cops who I wouldn't call them the most. How can I say this? I wouldn't call them the two cops that believe in equality the most out of everybody. They have this demeanor with her that's very demeaning. Uh, that she's a little less than her, and she's basically said to get out of the car because there's suspicion that she's been drinking alcohol.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting. I think one of the cops is one of the cops on Jimmy's payroll, right?
Yeah,
The bigger one. So the first thing I thought of was this orchestrated, Juggy? Like, did and if so, like, was Michael in on this? We didn't see the judge have any chats with Jimmy about this, but is it at the end of the day, like, did he have a part in this? What do you think?
I think he definitely did. I think he lured her there, and either he called Jimmy to call the cop, or I think they set it up beforehand because you remember him and Lee are driving home, and when they get to that light, if Lee looks that
Mm,
way, she sees her pull over, sees her with the cops, right? But
yeah,
at that point, he says to Lee, "I love you," and of
yeah,
course, she
good guy.
doesn't look over there, and he needed to get on this trial, and he wasn't going to do it, based on anything else. And I think he had his good friend removed from this case because
Well, not even
took it.
like removed from the case was the absolute, like the bare minimum. She's looking at, like, her reputation being like
Yep.
appalled, like everything. And yeah, like you said, like this is what he's willing to do to at this point save his own ass. He's not even trying to save Adam's ass anymore because he knows, like, his ass is on the line. So it's like just completely unmoral behavior. And of course that I love you, like, that's that's fake.
Yeah.
Like, he panicked. He had to say, okay, I got to say something to Lee or she's going to look over, probably go over there and see what's going on because she's a lawyer.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's I don't know. It was the whole episode. It makes you feel icky because, like, the judge is just he's just going further and further, and he has to do this clearly because if not, they're gonna kill him. But yeah, it's just bad. It's a bad look for him.
Yeah, and so yeah, they're there, and they get home, and there's a surprise party for him, but he talks, it's a he said it's an icky scene, and he convinces Judge LeBlanc to step down because, like you said, she could have lost her judgeship, she could have lost her reputation, a lot of her cases could have been thrown out because if you get caught as a judge with a criminal record or anything like that, a lot of your cases can be expunged based on your character. So it's a lot for her in her career, and she decided to step down. And the funny thing was, she said, "Well, I can't trust too many lawyers. I can't trust too many judges in here. Only the guy in courtroom 14," which of course was,
It's court. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, and you could see the look on his face. He's gotta feel like an actual piece of garbage for you know for doing this to her, and then for her to say, "Oh, you're the only person that I know's got your back and gonna put him away," and it's like, no, exact opposites. It's also worth noting at this little dinner party they have, Django. He walks up to the table and he kind of spills his guts, and of course, what's there but the brain piece from Trevor, the
yeah,
blackmailer. And it just kind of comes to show, like, anything he tries to do or anything he's trying to cover up, kind of just a lot of the times just comes back and spits it right back him in his face. So I just thought that was a funny scene, funny analogy.
yeah, no, no, agreed. And yeah, so that's kind of the end of episode 7. He's going to step in as the judge in this case, of course. I mean, that was bound to happen. Um, and he gets it's well, yeah. I we start the next episode where they're on trial, and this was a lot of the episode. It's spent in the courtroom. It's he Laura McGee is like I said, she's a strong woman. She's defending the state, fighting for Kofi Jones, and her opening statements are really profound. She calls out the defense for basically being a bigot, a racist, having a violent past, and called out the defense for a self defense plea. And she uses that by saying, Kofi Jones was 5'7" and 40 pounds lighter than Carlo Baxter. There's no self-defense. Like it's like me or you going to a 4-year-old and saying, "Oh yeah, like it was self-defense." Well, no, we beat the kid up. Like it was.
Yeah.
She illustrated the point well.
Yeah, no, and she does it like she does an excellent job of saying it before the defense says it, because obviously that's their move, and it's I think they're playing checkers and she's playing chess, in the sense that she's getting rid of that option for them, or just plainly, I would say, I, like making it look bad that they're going to use it by already bringing it up and saying like there's no such way that this was self-defense.
Right,
Also,
and she's putting the defense on their heels from the
yeah,
jump because they have to scramble and come up with another thing to say to the jury because it's already in their head. So they're like, okay, well, we're gonna wait to hear this, and it's not this because X.
yeah,
And the judge, he pushed back on her in her opening statement because the defense was saying, you know, this is not true, Your Honor, and he called her out and told the jury to forgo what they thought about the Baxter family. And this was interesting. He speaks to the jury a lot in this episode, more than I've ever seen a judge talk to a jury in a show that I've ever watched. So 2 or 3 times in this episode, he speaks directly to the jury and tells them to forget information or forget this. Like it's interesting that the show took this angle.
yeah, I agree. I've never seen it either, at least not this much. And in his own right, their decision is his fate, essentially, because if they plead Carlo guilty, he's as good as dead, and he knows that.
Yeah.
So he's going to do everything to interfere. This whole thing, like, he comes out and says, "Oh, like, after you leave this court today, you're not talking to anybody. You're not going on social media. You're not going on the media, seeing their background of this family. You're to go home and basically, just sit and stare at the wall, essentially."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we see this come into play later, but yeah, I mean, he's doing his best to maybe, I would say, get the jury not to be aware of like this family if they don't already know, which I'm sure they would have, and basically giving him his best shot of getting him to plead not guilty.
Yeah, exactly. And the defense, they were kind of put on their heels and they say that they have proof that Carlo was in his cell the night of the murder. He didn't leave it. He's in his, they basically said he's in his home. It's a 5'6" home. He's only got this amount of space and he didn't leave the home the night of the murder.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it wasn't a great defense. I mean, it was kind of lazy. Like, it was kind of like, okay. I didn't think.
I don't know. I didn't mind it. One thing about this, like, even though the entire episode is basically held in court,
Yeah.
um, I didn't really mind, like, both sides. I thought you rarely ever see two really, really good lawyers go at it. And
Hmm.
I thought that's kind of what we got here, was two pretty even lawyers going at it. Obviously, the case is tilted one way, like, clearly because of the evidence and, you know, solely on the Baxter name. But, I didn't mind the defending lawyer. I thought he did a pretty good job. That whole Shakespeare thing, and,
Hmm.
his favorite word was home, and all that was, I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, kind of had me convinced anyways, but I know you're a little bit more skeptical than I am.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of everything. That's my nature. Somebody says the sky's blue, I'll say it's red. I just, that's how I operate.
Good nature.
That is my nature. So Nancy Costello and Lee talk outside the courtroom during one of these recesses, and it's interesting because they both suspect that the Baxters got Judge LeBlanc removed from the courtroom, and because she was a staunch hater of the family, and she was open about it. And I found it interesting that neither of them suspected the judge, of course, but I think it was a small scene. It wasn't very long. It's like 35 seconds, but I think they included it because they're both so close to the judge and they still don't suspect him. I think clearly he had something to do with it just based on this scene.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know about you. To me, one of these characters is going to be the one who first figures it out that, that the judge is either working with the Baxters or what
Mhm.
there's more than what's on the surface.
Yeah, I would say probably Lee, but I don't know. She's so jaded to him and his real
Right.
persona. She sees him in such a positive light, and both of them have such a high opinion of him that it's going to be very tough for them to really see him for what he really is.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. Like, I mean, them kind of just like talking or, and of course, Jimmy, he can't help himself, just start yelling and gets like, just gets frustrated with what the progression, I would say, of the court. Um, and he just obviously makes a scene, and like, I mean, they're both standing there and everyone can see them. Like, what, how, anyways, it's not a good look for the judge, but obviously he gets away with it somehow.
Right. And so at this point, they bring it after the recess. A black witness is brought into the court. He's on crutches. And he basically tells this really emotional testimony about how he was basically curb stomped into the ground multiple times by Carlo Baxter. He was near death, like he was very close to dying. He may never walk again. Like it was a serious thing, and the the lawyer McGee does a good job because she says, "Who who did that to you?" And he says, "Well, Carlo Baxter." And she says, "Him right there." And she goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, who was the lawyer defending him when he was put on, put away for that?" And he goes, "The guy over there." And so she's basically talking to the jury again, just saying, "This guy's got a history of violence, and he did it to him, a black, same demographic, basically same person, and associated with desire." And uh, she painted a good picture there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even going as far as pointing out that the Baxter family are liars and saying that, the mother was on testimony
Hmm.
saying that her son didn't do it. Um, but obviously right after this, and this is the judge helping
Yeah.
Carlo Baxter, get off. And he's like, "Oh, you must have some scars from, obviously this injury." He's like, "Yeah, I do, like on my back." He's like, "Oh, and you have a scar on your, behind your neck as well." And he goes, "No, that's not from that." And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." And then he directs it right towards the defense, where the
Hmm.
defense figures out he's got a big D on the back of basically the back of his ear. And I thought this was, I thought this was very similar to the scene where Kofi Jones, they do the same thing with Kofi. They basically make him take off his shirt to show his tattoo in front of all the court. But in this sense, the defense uses this against the jury and basically make him turn around in a way that the jury can see the back of his neck. But I thought the judge was so embarrassed, he said, of that judge for doing that. Like, oh, like that was such a dishonorable thing. Like, I can't believe he would have done that. And here he
Hmm.
is doing the exact same thing in court, basically to save his ass. So yeah. Anyways, it was just funny. Like, I saw that comparison, and thought, like, wow, that just shows you how far this guy has come, or how far he's fallen, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, exactly. So yeah, he shows his tattoo. He kind of helps the defense, saying, you're associated with a drug gang that's has a history of violence too, and he doesn't look like a great witness. He kind of it ruins his testimony because the jury thinks, well, this guy's not credible. Um, but it's at this point that the judge goes out to lunch with Lee, and they're going to the restaurant, and Jimmy's there. He's tailing him when he's in the restaurant when the judge gets there, and he basically threatens the judge, saying, "My son better get off." And he's like, "This isn't going well so far. Like, you need to do better, or I need to see results here, and I want a verdict soon because I don't want him in prison anymore."
Yeah, he's mad. He's mad, and basically they're calling him son a racist, which he blatantly is a racist.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's it's pretty knowledgeable that everyone knows that. But yeah, like, and the judge does a great job here of counteracting, basically saying, this is going to take some time. Like, I have to gain the jury's trust before I can basically tell them to do what I want,
Mm-hmm.
because I can't just be in favor of your son and you, because that will clearly make me look like I'm working for you, and that it's they'll clearly go the other way. So he does a good job of standing up to Jimmy in the same sense. But as Jimmy and Frankie are leaving, um, I guess Adam's aunt, or you could say sister-in-law of the judge, sees them leaving
Mm-hmm.
and kind of brings it up later. I love her because she's the one character that sees through all the bullshit. Like,
Yeah,
she's if it's not Lee or Nancy that's gonna figure it out, it'll be the aunt for sure.
it'll be her. Yeah, she doesn't bite. She sees the judge for who he really is, and I think she saw him as a liar from a long time ago,
Mhm.
and she's definitely not going to give him the benefit of the doubt in this situation. But
Exactly.
so yeah, prior to them going out for dinner, because they're going to go celebrate Adam getting accepted into NYU, he's he's at school, and Franny, his teacher, who he was dating, comes up to him and says, well, this is my last semester here at the school. He goes, oh, like, why? And she goes, well, I'm looking for jobs in New York. And he's like, whoa, caught him off guard, like, whoa. And she goes, yeah, like, well, you're going to NYU, so we can be together. Like, you're 18, like, it'll be okay. And he lies to her and tells her that he didn't get in when he did. And this turns out to be a bigger plot line later, but she knows his secret, and he's lying to her and he's cheating on her, and that's, I think we both know, with women, they hold a grudge.
Yeah, well, you say that, but at the same time, I thought their last encounter, and this is the plot hole that I'll talk about later with Franny and her character, but I think the last time they talked, they're kind of in class, and it really seems like it kind of ended almost, or
Yeah,
maybe
I agree with you.
I just perceived it that way. Like you said, women could take things into different directions, but from what I could tell, it's kind of Adam saying, this is not working. Like, clearly, maybe you're not in love with me as much as I thought you were, and this is why maybe he starts to pursue Fia Baxter. So yeah, it's interesting, and like you said, it catches him off guard, because he's just like, oh, what do you mean? And I mean, this is an easy route for him just to say, no, I don't want to be with you. But yeah, no, I didn't get into the school. You thought I was going to.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it was in episode 5, they're in the classroom, he's kind of opening up to her, he tells her, and she kind of blows him off and says, like, I don't know, Adam, like, I don't know if this is for the best. And now she's all mushy over him again. I don't know if because he hasn't been talking to her or what, but yeah, it's weird. I don't know why all of a sudden she loves him again, but she's willing to move from New Orleans to New York, and that's not a quick flight. So she's clearly got some feelings for him.
Hmm.
So yeah, they all go out for dinner. We mentioned that the mother-in-law saw Jimmy and the judge talking, so she kind of starts to suspect some stuff. And then Adam says at dinner that he doesn't want to attend university and he might want to take a gap year. And his dad's, obviously the judge is like, what the hell, like, get the hell out of here, like, I don't need you in New Orleans anymore. And so that happens, and we'll get back more into that. But back into the courtroom, the medical examiner is on the stand, and this is the real big news. I think this is the biggest news of the episode, because we learn how they give him the autopsy of how Kofi actually died. Cause of death. He died from having his skull being bashed into a cement wall, and they went into great detail about how it had to break this wall because he had concrete in his skull. Like, in his skull, he had pieces of concrete in it. It had to have been from extreme force. So somebody really putting their effort into smashing a skull into concrete And, obviously a skull is a very strong, it's not easy to break. His was fractured.
Mhm.
And, he said basically it would have took 5 to 6 times for a skull to fracture off the wall of this, with this extreme force. And we see Laura McGee illustrate it beautifully. She goes up to the judge's podium and she smacks it 6 times very loudly for the jury. And I found this was an interesting choice and a very good role by the lawyer here.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's crazy is the judge, again, trying to take the defense side, says, oh, you're not showing these pictures to the jury. Like,
Mhm.
I don't need my jury, traumatized by the end of this. Like that's enough. Like, clearly, obviously, he's trying to make it look worse. And she kind of goes up. She thinks for like maybe a moment, and she's like, well, because I can't show you the pictures, I'm going to give you great graphic detail with words what actually happened and how it happened. So yeah, no, I thought it was good. Like you said, she's clearly an excellent lawyer. She's really good at what she does. Um, I can't remember. I don't think the defense has anything to say to the autopsy guy. I don't.
No, they don't. They say like no questions, Your Honor,
Yeah.
which is always weak.
So yeah. So it's obviously this is a right now it's very heavily tilted towards guilty, I would say. Um, and it's even at the point where I think the judge maybe got a note from the jury's room basically saying like, why is there even a case for this? This should be this is
It's
should be
open
shut
and
and
shut.
closed. Yeah, exactly.
And also, just to close that point, they found Carlos' DNA under Kofi's fingernails, which means that Kofi put up a fight. He didn't just let himself get killed. I mean, it shows the picture. He got his when he died, he got beat to hell. Like when he died, like he took a beating, and this really sealed it for, like you said, the jury saying, "Why is there a case?" They found his DNA under his fingernails. They said that the cement wall is the same as a cell, so it could very well have been Carlos, and it doesn't look good for the defense because, like you said, they don't ask a question, and they're kind of on their heels right now.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And the judge he's pulling out all stops. I don't know if you were gonna bring this up. I was just gonna bring up the scene with the woman, but
Yeah.
do you have anything in between there?
Nope. No. Go for it.
Oh, okay. So there's one woman the camera keeps panning to quite often. She's in the front. She's a bigger black girl. There's probably 3 or 4 black people throughout the in the jury, and but it keeps panning to this woman, and at one point she's wiping away tears, like yeah, she's and the judge knows that the mind's kind of. He even says to the woman later one on one, he says, "I can tell which way the jury is going to go just on day one."
Right.
So clearly he knows that this girl is obviously swaying towards guilty. So what does he do? He basically says, someone's ratted you out. We know that you're, on media, looking at media of the case and of the family. Like, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to be removed. And she says, on what grounds? Who is this? Like, I've done no such thing. And he says, okay, well, let me see your phone. Well, takes his phone, opens up Safari, and basically just blatantly searches up the trial or whatever it was and gives it back to her and says, what is this? It's a very cold move. It's calculated, obviously, because getting rid of one of the main, I would say, probably the main jury that is going to sway this case towards guilty is a good move for him. But
Mhm.
obviously, again, it just his moral ladder just keeps going down and down.
Yeah. It's another really, his character is shining through. This is such a breach of etiquette. I mean, this is what happens somewhat during, when you pick the jury, when both sides can say, nope, I don't want him, he's out. I don't want her, he's out. And he clearly fabricates that she Googled, she threatens to go to the press, and he threatens her, really. He says, it's not worth it. Carlo Baxter is going down. I promise you. He's going to jail with or without you on the jury, but I can't have you on the jury anymore. And she buys it. But he promised her that he would be going to jail, and it's a big
Plays the kid.
promise.
He
And
plays the kid card, Juggy. He even plays the kid card and says, "Do you have a kid?
yeah,
Well, you should be thinking about them." Which I thought was like that's another level when you bring that into it.
yeah, no, great point. And it's interesting for me too, Shay, just with the climate we're in, that they picked a black woman. Clearly, still there's the divide between black and white here, and he clearly thought that it was apparent that she was going to be in favor of Kofi, but she was going to be in favor of the right way to go here. I mean, we know the facts of the case. I mean, she's not picking a side because he's black, in my opinion. She's picking Kofi's side because she's doing what's right. She's giving justice. But I just found it interesting that the show chose to go in that direction. I think Shay might be frozen here, but yeah, I mean, in the show they removed her, the black juror, and a black judge. So two black women were removed from this case. I just find that a little interesting.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I read something online basically, and it basically kind of said like it's showing the true nature of this system that we live in, where two white men basically battling for their kids,
Mhm.
scheming essentially for their kids, and you have a black woman not doing anything wrong but being pulled over and arrested basically because she's black.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we mentioned Adam. He was accepted to NYU. This is the end of the episode. He's said he's not going to go. He told his teacher Franny that he didn't get in, but the judge went to talk to her because he's trying to convince. He's like, "Can you talk to Adam about changing his mind about going to NYU?" And she goes like, "Wait, what the hell?" And he goes, "Well, he got in." And she's like, clearly dumbfounded by this because he just blatantly lied to her. And he's like, "Can you please talk to him?" And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, no problem." And at the end of the episode, she sees Adam and Fia walking together, holding hands, and she's gonna got this look on her face that is not like, "Oh, I'll just let this go." She's got a bullet in the chamber that she can pull here, that she can shoot here if she wants to.
Yeah, and that's one thing we don't really know enough about her character to know if she is going to. But you're right, just having that bullet, like you said, definitely makes her a threat at the end of the day. Because I mean, she's got really nothing to lose at the end of the day. I mean, she knows the dirty little secret. But yeah, no, it's a good way to end things, I think. But overall, I mean, the show it's got the holes. Like I said, they bring Franny in, it seems like once in a while. I mean, she knows a secret, but they don't really develop anything with that. I think Adam's character is kind of it's took in a downward spiral. Like from the time he kind of falls in love and with Fia, it's not really progressing anything. I don't find that there's much development in his character either. So I'm not super I'm not super fond of that. But yeah, and like I like how we talked about earlier about him dragging the body just plain as day through the shipyard. I mean, it's doesn't make much sense, but yeah, it's yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I don't like including Franny with her making the decision because we know nothing about her character. A show that gets criticized a ton online, but I think it's a great show. I mentioned earlier, it's Better Call Saul, and it's a slow build. But when you get to seasons 3 and 4 and major characters have to make decisions, you know what they're going to decide to do because you know their character development. You've seen it, right? And I think it's only 10 episodes. I get it, but you can do a better job of building these characters. The judges, they've done a good job with him. Adam, I don't know if you can say you know him anymore. I mean, he killed a kid. He didn't do it mercilessly, but he did it on accident. But what do we really know about Adam? That he's a weird kind of neurotic kid. We don't know what he's really about. Desire, Big Mo. We don't know much about her. Like we just know that we know Jimmy Baxter, but I think the show has failed in developing characters to a strong degree here. I just don't think they've done enough of it.
Yeah, and we talked about it on our last podcast how they kind of went nowhere with this Trevor thing and being blackmailed and all that. You know, they could have used that episode to kind of develop some of these characters, like you said, like Big Mo and the Desire Gang, and more towards that. Even Eugene, I think, now has a role, and you can see that he's conflicted because he even says in the episode ah, like Big Mo's giving me money every week, and he tells Lee, you want to give me the system, basically saying like you're going to put me in a home.
Mm-hmm.
But I and I think that's great, but at the end of the day, he's not a main. I don't consider him a main character. Like his storyline's great, but I don't. At the end of the day, I don't know if it's going to make a big difference. If he makes a big move in the end, like I don't know, like maybe he takes out Carlo Baxter. Maybe he's the one who's I'm going to step up and get revenge for my family. Like that'd be awesome. But as for some of these main characters, you're like, I think Franny's had maybe 5 scenes this whole show.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just even Carlo. Like
Yeah.
they could have done more with him, and the mother too. I think it's just,
Mother's faded.
yeah, she could have been a really interesting character, and they didn't do enough with it because I think she was interesting at one point. Now we can't even forget that she's there. But yeah, I mean, there's 2 episodes left. We're gonna cover it, of course, but hopefully the last 2 episodes are really good. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. There's a lot of loose ends here, a lot of different ways it could go, but it's kind of messy right now. So we'll see what they do. But we'll be talking about that 2 weeks time. They are delaying the last episode until the 14th, Valentine's Day, because of Super Bowl 55 this weekend. So that'll come on 14th. We'll talk about it here on the 16th. So next week we're gonna do a basketball podcast. We'll talk about some of the biggest stories around the NBA. Maybe the Brooklyn Nets playing no defense. The Clippers hot start, LeBron and the Karen situation, maybe. But we'll talk about a bunch of different NBA storylines. Shea's Celtics.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get a sports week next week, and then we'll wrap up Your Honor the following week.
Yeah, and I know we kind of bashed at these last 2 episodes, but I think it's still a fair watch. I wouldn't definitely give it my highest rating, but I think it's definitely interesting. Bryan Cranston can, I think he does a great job of being a compelling character no matter what he is.
Right.
So I think that's why, it's attractive to most people because he's a big name and he plays a Walter White likes character. So I think people should definitely still give this a go. But yeah, I'm excited to talk ball next week. I really enjoyed your episode with Billy from St. Thomas. That was his name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you guys had your episode, I really enjoyed it because it was kind of a season preview for myself. So now we can go. I don't know how many games they're going to play with this, with how many are being postponed and COVID and everything. But I love the fact that we're going to talk about some, and we'll talk about the Celtics. We'll talk about the Raps' slow start, but yeah, clearly there's a lot going on with a rookie race, and who's going to get the rookie of the year, as well as who do you think were going to be final contenders when it's all over?
Exactly. Yeah, a lot happened in the NBA. Obviously, COVID's starting to hit the NHL and NBA pretty hard here, but we'll be all over it next week. What does the rest of your week look like, Shay?
Man, I'm just working. It's middle of busy season for me, so I'm working a lot, but I will probably have to catch up on some of my shows. I started The Wire, which I talked about last week, and that's been really, really good. I've been watching that a ton. Yeah, my Leafs play Thursday, hoping for another win. Heard you and Dawson talking about that last episode about how you thought Montreal was a better team. Took that a little personally. I'm not gonna lie, I'm like Michael Jordan in that sense. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to when Montreal and Toronto play again because I think they both changed a lot since that first game, I guess.
Yeah, a week from tomorrow.
Yeah, so it should be good. What about yourself?
Yeah, just work. Gonna do couple podcasts this week with our friend Brody Terrio about UFC. Gonna be doing
Nice.
one um, Friday with Matt Wright about the Super Bowl 55 preview. And then Saturday, our friend and our the guy who likes to chirp you quite a bit, Casey Ward's actually coming back on.
Okay.
And we might be doing a Facebook Live. We might be just doing a podcast. We haven't decided yet. I'm going to let him choose. But
Nice.
Saturday morning, we're going to talk about the greatest and the worst rebuilds in the last 10 in the last decade in the NHL.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. That's gonna be interesting because I'm big into prospects and rookies and guys getting drafted and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to hear that. If you do talk to Ryder, you gotta let him know he's a big Bachelor guy. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I do.
He's a big fan of the Batch.
Yeah, I don't know if he can come back on after Friday.
Yeah, but no, I'm looking forward to all of them. If you do get a chance to talk to Bodie, maybe you can talk to him getting a haircut and switching up from the man bun.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
He's getting tired, eh? That look.
Oh, I don't know if I can speak up personally, but I've never had the best hair, but critics around me say that he maybe should look into changing up that look a little bit.
All right. Well, I'll tell him that Kennedy said that, and I'll make sure he gets the point.
Sounds good.
No, but everybody, thanks for listening tonight. We'll be back next week to talk some NBA, but stay safe during the storm, and we'll talk soon.
Take care.